I say back like I haven't uploaded a video once a week, but that is really completely different. That is for my podcast, which if you've been following along or you know, I've just been talking about Legendborn for hours on end, sometimes with different people. Um, and this video is not going to be any different because guess what I'm about to be talking about again? Legendborn, as you can tell from the title and probably the cover and everything else about me. Because apparently I have one topic that I will beat to death. I think after this and after the first season podcast, which will be over in about 3 weeks, there's 3 episodes left. In the first season, then I'll put Legendborn to rest until July. Dun dun dun. Because that's when the sequel comes out. So, yes. So we'll get a break, and then I'll need to read it, and then I'll need to read it a couple more times over and over again, and then I'll decide about how much I love it. Okay, so really, this video is if you do not want to listen to my podcast, which why wouldn't you want to listen to my podcast? I'm excellent. Anyway, so if you don't want to listen to my podcast, this video is just going to be me talking about why I think Legendborn works, / why I enjoy it so much, / and kind of understanding of like why some people may not like it, and also like just kind of like looking at it from an ecocritical lens. Yeah, so that's what this video is going to be, which I have a good time doing all of those things. I like to talk, as seen from the hours on end of my podcast, Our Moment, a literary podcast, on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast. It's literally on everywhere you can think to find a podcast. And if it's not on somewhere you can think, then you should tell me that so I can put it on my site. I mean, I've been doing a lot of work. That's all I've been doing the past few months. Is recording and talking about Legendborn. I think I literally have a video, which the card will be like here, where I talk about the behind the scenes. Anyway, that's enough rambling for me. So, for those of you who have not seen any of my Legendborn videos and did not listen to the introduction of my podcast, this school year, I decided to start a book club called Our Moment Book Club with the BHI, which is the Black Honors Initiative that I do within the Honors College, with my friend Calvin, and we did 2 different books. So we did Legendborn, and we also did We Are Owed by Artie Brown. Legendborn is by Tracy Deonn, and it is because I read Legendborn earlier this year. I read it in like April or May, and I was like, this is the greatest book I have read all year. I am obsessed with it. And there are just so many reasons it works for me. Anyway, so Legendborn is about this girl named Brianna Matthews, and her mom passes away in a car accident after they have had an argument. And Bree blames herself, obviously, but the argument they had was about her going away to the University of North Carolina for early college, which is just because, like, I think it's early college is like halfway Tracy Deonn's excuse for having it be teenagers, which that's not a bad thing. I think justifying your YA novel in the sense of the world makes sense, because sometimes people are like, what is the purpose of them being so young other than you only wanting to write young characters? Why aren't they adults? I will say teenagers are just overly dramatic. I was a teenager. I'm no longer a teenager, thank goodness. But I think teenagers, oh my gosh, my ears need to pop. Teenagers are like good when you want to like really go high drama or really like explore that super emotional, terrible time. I'm happy I never have to be a teenager again. Anyway, so yeah, so Bree and her mom fight about her wanting to go to early college at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And then they fight that night. The next morning, Bree's like, I'm not going to talk to my mom. And then her mom dies that night. And so the prologue of the story takes place where she's in the hospital and she finds out her mom's dead. And she thinks something's up, and she's so consumed with like that she thinks something bad happened to her mom, and one, she blames herself, so she's so consumed with her grief that she can't really see beyond that. And so she's like, okay, something has got to be up here. It's like it's something else going on. And then she finds out that there is magic. Obviously, there's always magic. She finds out magic exists because this is a low fantasy. Low fantasy being that it's grounded in real life versus high fantasy like The Hobbit. Anyway, Lord of the Rings. So this is a low fantasy and not high fantasy. I just said it wasn't. This is a low fantasy, and yeah. So she's on this campus and she realizes that there are demons and stuff running wild, and she's like, I think a demon or maybe a Merlin, and Merlins are the like magic, the primary magic users in the story. She's like, I think it was either a demon or a Merlin or something that hurt my mom, and so she has to enter the Order of the Round Table, a secret society on University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill's campus, and she has to infiltrate it to figure out what happens to her mom, and other stuff ensues. Anyway, speaking of the book, I will show you the cover, because that's actually what attracted to me in the first place. This is the cover. This is the book. Looking perfect, looking unread. This is not my copy of the book that I read. The very first time I read it on my Kindle as an ebook, not a sponsor. And I was like, oh, I love this book. So this is a clean copy. The copy that I read and that I used for my podcast and for all like my book club endeavors looks like this. As you can see, what went down here. Currency proposed. It used to say my name here. It still says my name like right here. If it's not being blinded out. And as you can see, it's got some stuff going on. It's because I love it. Okay, it's well loved. You should just be lucky the binding isn't broken. And like, here's my name again. But just all over. At some point you can see just how much I've like written. I've written like my own little questions inside here. Different things. Anything I like genuinely wanted to discuss with my book club, I put in here. Also, you're the type of person that doesn't believe in writing in books and like dog-earing pages. I'm so sorry. You're probably going to hate me because that's one of the things. I feel like a well-loved book deserves to be written in and deserves to be loved. I mean, other people can do what they want, and I'm going to do what I want. And what I want to do is to write and highlight like crazy in my book. But if I were going to let somebody borrow this copy, borrow this book, it wouldn't be this copy because there are definitely spoilers in it for where I went in and was like, ooh, what if I point out all the foreshadowing in it. So that's what I was doing in this book. Anyway, this is not about me writing a book. This is about why I think the book works. And I honestly 100% believe the novel Legendborn, Tracy Deonn's first novel, 100% relies on the character of Bree. Now, this is the type of book I prefer. I know some people won't, but I'm very much a character person over a plot person, and that can be like divisive for some people. This book does have a plot. Obviously, it wouldn't have gotten published if it didn't have a plot, but it's much more focused on the character of Bree and after Bree, who is a part of Bree that she locks away, that appeared after her mom died. And it's about Bree, how she is in her grief and how she tries to manage that while also managing this whole outside world she found herself in. And oh my gosh, there's a glare on my glasses. Anyway, this is what happens when you don't have a proper ring light, people. You can see that that's my lighting mechanism. Anyway, so the book itself is about Bree learning to deal with all of this, right? Yeah, so Bree is learning to do like having to deal, and I think it lives or dies on that. If you and I think if you are not a fan of character driven stories, one, read the book anyway, but it may not hit as hard for you, perhaps. Um, and I also think this can be a good or bad thing. It's obviously a good thing for me because I enjoy the book. It does have its problems. I think um, there are certain times where it does feel like the plot gets pushed on the wayside and comes roaring back in part 4 of the book. And everything else is in service for that final ending, which it should be in service for that final ending. But I feel like as sometimes it feels like if I read the prologue, um, read bits and pieces from thing, and then from the middle, and then went immediately prologue, part 1, and part 4. I feel like I could almost go straight through. Of course, I'd be like, who are these people? But anyway, I wouldn't do that. I would read all the way. Anyway, so yeah, so I feel like part 1 and part 4 are the most important bits for the plot and the world building. But if you read everything else, you're really inside Bree's head, right? And I think you can dislike Bree, because she is quite annoying. But that she's 16. 16-year-olds are annoying. That's just like, that's part of their charm. That's part of being a 16-year-old. Annoying everybody. Sorry to my 16-year-old little sister. But no, so she's 16, she is annoying, and also her mom just died. I think she gets a pass. And sometimes some of Bree's choices are like, why would you do that? But also, I don't think there's a single choice that she makes in the story that is not justified. Like, everything she does makes sense, even if you feel like like no normal person would do that. Because one, unless you've been in a situation where there's so much grief for someone so important to you losing, you don't know yourself how you're going to react in that like grief. I suppose this like video is kind of serving. This is me being spoiler-free review, and I'm only talking about Bree. There are other characters in the book I can talk about, like Nicholas and Selwyn, my boys. I love them, but I'm not going to talk about them in this video because this video is not about them. Because as much as they help add to like the story of Bree, and as much as they are needed in Legendborn, once again, I'm going to say the book lives or dies on Bree herself. Yeah, so let's talk about Bree. Bree, as seen from the cover, looks like this. Cover, once again, beautiful. I love her so much. But she is wrestling not only with losing her mother, but she is on this campus, and it is a predominantly white institution, meaning there are not a lot of black people there. And not only is it a predominantly white institution, it is also a southern institution. And this is where ecocritical reading kind of comes in. And when I say ecocritical reading, that basically means like relating to or involving an analysis of how the natural world is portrayed in literature. But also, I mean like in ecology in general, like so also like how we relate to our environment. So the environment that Bree is in is a southern, predominantly white institution. So obviously there will be conversation of racism in this book, and it's all throughout of it. And some elements I think are done better than others, and I'm not going to say what. Listen to my podcast. Maybe I talk about it there. You don't know, because I'm trying not to go too deep into spoilers. But I think it's all really well handled. But in talking about Bree interacting with her environment, there's a big part of this book that is talking about like natural things, and if you take too much from the natural order of things or like from the earth, then there's always a price, right? And I'm specifically talking about the magic system and the rules of the magic system. There are two different types of magic in the book: ether and rootcraft, which are the same thing, but they're different practices, right? And when using ether, the people who use ether in the novel just take. They just take it. They don't get back. But the root crafters have this connection to the land and to their ancestors with whom they are taking from, that it is not taking, they're borrowing. They're asking for permission to use the magic. And that's actually a super important part of the story. No spoilers, redacted. It's important. Um, so yeah, so you have that part of nature, but then you also have, like, in relation to her environment, Bree. There's this like really amazing passage on page 75. If you're going to read the book, which once again I feel like you should. I've been talking about this for almost 15 minutes now, so you should be reading it. Where Bree, the narrator, who is Bree, says, growing up black in the South, it is pretty common to find yourself in old places that just weren't made for you. Maybe it's a building, a historic district, or a street, some space that was originally built for white people and white people only, and you just have to hold that knowledge while going about your business. And then she goes on to say sometimes it's obvious, like when there's a dedication to the boys who wore gray on a plaque somewhere, or a rebel flag flying high out front. Other times, it's the date on a marker that tips you off. Junior high school field trip to the state capitol, big gorgeous Greek revival architecture, built in 1840. Oh yeah, those folks never thought I'd be strolling the halls, walking around thinking about how their ghosts would kick me out if you could. You gain an awareness, learn to hear the low buzzing sounds of exclusion, a sound that says, we didn't build this for you, we built it for us. This is ours, not yours. It's not built for people who looked like me as a Bree, but also me, but definitely built by them. And I think that that's one way in which, like, she is forced to, in her intersections as a black young woman, is forced to confront the feelings of being othered and being like, I was never meant to be here. I was never meant to, like, move through these halls. I was only ever meant to help maintain it. And that's a really important part of, like, I think analyzing, like, the way in which we all respond to our environments. Like, for black people, or like for me, I always have to consider where I'm at. And it is like strange. I mean, I go to a PWI as well, and I feel that, like, just last summer, our library on campus of LSU used to be named after a man who did not want people like me on his campus at all. In fact, he did what he could to keep us off the campus, right? So I just really related Bree in that regard. So in the question of how does Bree interact with her environment, she is very, I won't say careful, but she's very, like, she has to understand her own relation to things and to the people that are there. And she looks around and she's like, there's not people that look like me within this organization. There's not people I can turn to. I am disrupting things. And she understands that disruption. And part of her, like, prides herself on it. And there are points in the novel, several points, where other characters point out, like, that she does not belong. And I think that's important when we consider how we look at the environment. We're not just looking at, like, the earth. We're looking at the things that came from the earth and the way that which people interact with the earth, and the imaginary borders we set up here, and the false ownership we feel over things that have nothing to do with us and will be here far after we die. That got dark. Yeah, I also just, I think the book works because of that. It works, as an intro novel, it works because its character is so strong that she works the plot. Also, on the topic of disliking Bree, it's fine to dislike her. But God forbid you read her as a passive character. And if you do think that she is passive, you're not going to have a fun time with this book at all. I don't think she's passive. Because of the reason that, like, for the critique of the plot coming back at the end, things don't just happen to Bree. She's, like, the cause of so many things happening in this novel. Like, she's the reason that people get wound up. Like, even when she's, like, passing out all over the place, she is the reason for it. It's not just happening to her or around her. It's happening because of her. So I don't think it's fair to call her a passive character. But that's just a mini rant of a conversation I had about the book. Anyway, read the book. Read Legendborn. Follow me. Look at how beautiful. I'm also going to put in a picture of well, I won't, because I feel like if I show a picture of the cover of the sequel, which is going to be called Blood Marked, that comes out in July, then it's gonna, like, it's technically low-key almost a spoiler, so I'm not even going to say anything. But yes, the book works so well because of how strong Bree as a character is. If she was a weaker character or a more passive character, I don't think the book would have gotten picked up at all, let alone published, and become an instant New York Times bestseller. Hello, Tracy Deonn. You're excellent. DM me so you can come on my podcast. Also, follow my podcast, Our Moment Literary Podcast, everywhere. Like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to know more about the books, you can also follow me on Goodreads, or you can follow me on Twitter, because I'm guaranteed to talk about it at some point. Yes, and I just love Brianna Matthews. I'm basically a Bree Matthews variant. So, even though I do have my issues with her, and I think she's going to get better in the second book, about letting certain things overwhelm her, because her whole character arc is that she is overwhelmed with the grief of her mom, and she learns to deal with that. It's not something that's ever going to leave her. And she suffers from it, and she grows from that suffering. I just love her so much. I'm about to start crying. But yes, that is my review of Legendborn, even though it's not really a review of the book, more like just a conversation on Bree Matthews as a character and how she interacts with her environment. Yes. Okay. I'll see you all later. Have a very fantastic day. I hope those of you who are students are getting through finals really well. Bye. Sidebar. I definitely wore a red scarf in my hair because the colors in this are red and blue, and red is really Bree's color. And also look at how her hair is just all over the place. Also look at her hair, look at her facial expressions, and look at the... Anyway, I just wanted to match the book. And also Tracy. And also, Tracy Deonn, if you ever watch this, I need you to release a necklace like Bree has with this on it, and honestly, you're missing a golden opportunity. Okay, now stand by.